Welcome to the Freely Rooted Mama podcast. Where I am their mother, I make the choice. Hello, mamas. Happy Thursday. I hope you guys are doing awesome. Today, we're going to go into second and third trimester nutrients. So excited to be covering this. I did first trimester nutrients already, so go back and listen to that if you haven't, because many of those nutrients we need to carry into our second and third trimester, including vitamin A, B12, vitamin C, choline, magnesium, zinc, and probiotics. So those are all still necessary for a second and third trimester, but I'm not going to go back through them again today. So go check out that episode if you want to know more about those. Because you may be listening to this and you're like, I'm in my second trimester. I don't need first trimester nutrients. Yes, you do. So go back and listen to that episode. So we have 5 additional nutrients that we're going to add in for the second and third trimester. First one starting with calcium. So calcium absorption doubles during pregnancy to meet baby's requirements. And baby's requirements really start to come into play during the second and third trimester, mostly in that last 6 weeks of pregnancy, actually. In that last 6 weeks, about 80% of baby's reserves of calcium are going to be built. So we want to make sure that during the first trimester, most people can get enough calcium through food. But if the two like little situations here, if you have given birth 6 months ago and you're pregnant again, that would be a time that you really want to start supplementing. Or if you breastfed a child and now you're pregnant again, that would be another situation that you'd want to really actually probably supplement with calcium because your reserves are probably low. So for example, we breastfed Isaac for 14 months maybe, but I got pregnant when he was like he wasn't even 1 yet. Anyways, that's just an example of I was still breastfeeding a child pregnant. My calcium stores are probably depleted from not only when I gave birth to Isaac and he took a big chunk in that last 6 weeks, but also through breastfeeding. So I needed to make sure that I had enough calcium for this pregnancy for my last 6 weeks, which I'm currently in right now as I'm recording this. I am 37 weeks and feeling very out of breath. So hopefully I don't sound like I just ran a race as I'm doing this podcast. But really important for me to focus on calcium stores to make sure that I have enough for Isla. So those would be 2 situations where you're probably going to end up supplementing just to make sure that you've got enough for baby. But most of it you can get through food. We want about 1,000 milligrams a day. And we kind of want it spread out throughout the day. So if you are going to take a supplement, try to split it into a couple times during the day if you can. And don't take it with your iron. That's ideal. Benefits for baby include the development of their skeletal system, cardiac function. It's involved in muscle and nerve development. Benefits for mom. Of course, if baby is taking too much from mom stores, that can lead to poor bone health for mom. It can also lead to more postpartum symptoms. It can, if mom doesn't have enough, it can increase the risk of a preterm delivery, increased risk in gestational hypertension or preeclampsia. So really important that we have enough calcium. Foods that you can get calcium from: buttermilk, goat's milk, sardines, ricotta, yogurt, kefir, salmon, goat cheese. Just a quick little note on the foods. When I mention things like yogurt, kefir, milks, stuff like that, of course, I always say raw is best. Raw milk, raw cheese, raw yogurt, raw kefir, always best. It's got all the probiotics and enzymes in it. Still hasn't been processed. But I understand that that's not for everybody. And I also understand that not every state sells it. So when you're going to go pick out some of these items, please turn the container, the jar, whatever you're buying it in, over and look at the ingredients. Because many yogurts, many kefirs, even milks have a lot of sugar in them, a lot of sugar. So don't get anything that's been sweetened. Sweeten it yourself when you get home, like with a little bit of, you can do like some date syrup, you can do some fruits, you can do a little bit of honey, you can do lemon extract. Flavor it yourself once you get home, because then you're skipping a whole lot of synthetic ingredients that are probably put into that product. So just a little FYI, I don't want you, in the first trimester nutrients, we talked a lot about what a cell needs, and we talked about proteins and carbs and fats. And so if we're buying a bunch of food that's clogged with sugar, we're going to have a really hard time getting the nutrients out of that food. And chances are it's probably got less nutrients anyways because it's been processed and it's been added with all these natural flavorings and sugars and all that. So just try to avoid it as much as possible. Moving on to the next one, iron. So it's one of the most common deficiencies in the world. Estimated about only 20% of women enter into their pregnancy with sufficient needs of iron. So 20% is not a lot. This is really common too if you don't eat a lot of red meat. So nothing against you, but you do you. But if you're not a red meat eater, you probably want to make sure that your iron levels you just want to check them. And most health practitioners, when you move into, OBGYN, midwife, something like that, they will check your iron stores. But it's really important to make sure that we have enough iron, especially during our first trimester. We don't need as much because we have the absence of our menstruation, which is like one of the glorious things about pregnancy. But in our second trimester, our blood volume increases by 45%. So we definitely want to make sure that we have enough in stores during that first trimester so that when we move into our second trimester, we're good to go. Fetal demands for iron are maxed out during the third trimester, and then we'll have a loss of iron following the birth of our baby. So again, this really helps with postpartum too. Making sure you have enough iron stores is really, really important. Just a couple things. If baby ends up being deficient in iron, risks could include preterm delivery. They could develop anemia, delayed cognitive development, obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure. So really important. Some foods that contain iron, we're back to organ meats. Liver, kidney, venison, sardines, duck, beef, fish, lamb, chicken, eggs. And if you're vegetarian, you can tap into lentils, quinoa, beans, and asparagus. But again, just make sure that you're getting enough to hit those daily requirements of about 27 milligrams a day, especially if you're already coming into the pregnancy depleted. Moving on to omega-3s. Love this topic because I love the brain. And remember that our brain is about 60% fat. And I talked about, I'm pretty sure it was on the first trimester nutrients, but I start to get confused on what episode I've talked about what. But I talked about the cell and how our cells, the outer membrane of our cell is made of fat. And we need plenty of fats. And I'm not just talking about any kind of fats. I'm talking about good fats, healthy fats. We need healthy fats to make our body work efficiently, to make our brain work efficiently, to make our brain grow. And so our brain is 60% good fat. We need omegas to help nourish the brain, especially baby's brain. So we want to make sure that we're getting plenty of healthy fats, including omega-3s. You're going to want to supplement omega-3s if you don't eat a lot of fatty fish. If you're currently breastfeeding or just got done breastfeeding, again, this was me. I've really made healthy fats a big priority of my just natural diet. So it wasn't as big of a concern for me moving into that first trimester of building enough fat reserves because I feel like I do a really good job in terms of my dietary needs of getting plenty of healthy fats. But I still do take an omega-3 supplement and have been during this whole pregnancy. But just a little FYI that you may supplement additionally if you were pregnant or just got done breastfeeding. It's really important that you look at the sourcing of your omega-3s if you are going to supplement because many of them are rancid. I remember, probably 7 years ago, we had a client come in and their omega ratio, we tested omega ratios 369 and they were horrible. They had so many bad omegas in their body and not enough good. And they're like, I don't understand. I've been taking omegas every day. And we're like, well, where do you get your omegas from? And she's like, Costco, because it comes in a big jar and we get them at Costco. Okay, well, Costco, now this was 6 years ago, so I don't want Costco finding me and suing me. But they were rancid. Many omegas are rancid. So you want to be really, really, really picky about what kind of omega supplement you're going to be taking. We want them to be sourced from high quality ingredients and we want no synthetic ingredients added. A good little key indicator of something that's probably gone rancid is if they have a synthetic vitamin A added. So avoid supplement that has that. Omegas are going to be most beneficial during that third trimester because this is when baby's brain is getting developed. And it's a rapid development during that third trimester. Benefits for baby also obviously include brain and nervous system development, shown to affect infant behavior, attention scores, visual recognition, language comprehension, and it protects the brain from oxidative damage. Benefits for mom, it lessens the risk of postpartum depression, reduces the risk of preeclampsia, and helps build stores for breastfeeding. Just remember, our breast milk has a lot of fat in it, which is so great, but we want to make sure that breast milk has fat in it. So make sure you're eating plenty of healthy fats. Foods that you can consume, salmon, oysters, sardines, cod, mussels, clams, flaxseed oil, chia seed oil, walnut oil, hemp seeds, pumpkin seeds. There's a company called Andrea Seed Oil that I love. They have flaxseed, pumpkin seed. They've got like 7 different seed oils. Because remember, seed oils, when we talk about them in a general health setting, are bad. Because seed oils are mostly rancid, are not good for you, are very synthetic, are very processed. But Andrea Seed Oils is actually, they use a technology from Germany where they cold press the oil, and it's all from organic sourcing. There's no synthetic anything added. And so the pumpkin seed is really good. They have a 5 seed oil blend that's really good. Anyways, you can put it over a salad. You can just take a teaspoon of it. That's what I've done actually through this pregnancy, is I'll just take a teaspoon a couple times a day of the oil straight up. It's super easy, and it just, I get enough of the fats in. You can put it on your skin so your skin can absorb it. Anyways, so if you're looking for something good, there's a little idea there for you. Okay, next one is vitamin D. Whew, if the pandemic taught us anything, it's that most people are vitamin D deficient. So our vitamin D stores are directly attached to baby's vitamin D stores. So if we're deficient, baby's deficient. If we're good, baby's good. So it's a 1-to-1 correlation there. It's extremely important if you're going to breastfeed that you make sure you have enough vitamin D, just because your levels of vitamin D are baby's levels of vitamin D at birth. So again, we're just really wanting to make sure that we have sufficient stores, but most people are deficient. So this is, again, typically something that your provider will test. But if they don't, you can always ask to test your vitamin D and just see. If you live somewhere, especially in the north, where you have long winters, not a ton of sunshine for like 6 months, or at least direct sunshine, you're probably going to be deficient. So, I lived in California for 8 years, get a lot of sun, and I was still deficient in vitamin D. This was during my pregnancy with Isaac. So I've been supplementing on vitamin D ever since, because now I live in Washington, the north, and we don't get as much sunshine as I did in California. So ideally you want, when you are looking at a vitamin D, you want it to be a fat-based drop or capsule, not a pressed powder or tablet or a powder-filled capsule form. It's usually aren't going to be like good sources of vitamin D. And you want approximately 2,000 to 4,000 IUs. Again, get tested, because then you'll see where you're at. I think the vitamin D that I take right now, I end up taking probably upwards to about 6,000 IUs. So everybody's different, right? But just get tested and see where you're at. Vitamin D is extremely important during that 3rd trimester when rapid skeletal growth taxes mother's vitamin D stores. Benefits for baby includes reduced risks of premature birth, required for bone and teeth development, required for the immune system, of course, which was why the pandemic taught us so much, and it protects against respiratory infections. Benefits for mom, the placental development and function of the placenta. Vitamin D will help in that. And then, of course, our immune system. Foods that you can look to are cod liver oil, salmon, sardines, milk, eggs, and we're back to the almighty liver. Okay, and then our last one is vitamin K2. So a little controversy. It's kind of why I left it for the last one. Deficiency in vitamin K is very normal for newborns. So there's 2 versions of vitamin K. We've got vitamin K1 and vitamin K2. Vitamin K1 does not cross through the placenta very well. And then vitamin K2 takes a pretty established GI tract in order to make it and process it, which newborn babies don't have. However, our vitamin K2 stores has been shown to cross the placenta, and vitamin K2 stores will really come out in the colostrum. So this is the part of the breast milk. It's different than breast milk, but you get it in the first, usually 2 to 5 days of birth, and it is thicker. They call it like liquid gold. It's got a yellowish tint to it. It's thicker. You don't produce as much of it. It's lower in, I believe it's lower in fat and sugars, but it's higher in protein. I always get them mixed up, but I got that right. It's higher in protein, and it's got a lot of antibodies, a lot of like immune system benefits. So that's why it's so important that once you give birth, if you can go right into one-to-one skin contact and then breastfeeding, that's when that colostrum is going to come out. So liquid gold, as they call it, our vitamin K2 stores can be given through that. So the reason that vitamin K is so controversial is because newborns are usually born deficient in it. They usually want to give a synthetic vitamin K shot. Again, this is totally a conversation that you need to have with, your spouse or with your doctor about what your choices are. But there are choices when it comes to vitamin K. So the vitamin K shot is a very popular thing that newborns get. However, if you are going to breastfeed right away, that would be a good indicator that you're probably going to be okay. However, sometimes mom is already deficient in vitamin K. So hence why it's on our list of nutrients for mom to make sure that she's adding in for her second, third trimester, because we want to make sure you have sufficient amounts of vitamin K to deliver through not only the placenta in that third trimester, but also through your colostrum. If you don't, then baby will not get as much. So I didn't really know as much about vitamin K in that sense that during Isaac's pregnancy. I mean, I knew enough about that I didn't want to do the vitamin K shot. We chose to do an oral natural vitamin K dropper that I would just put on my nipple. And then when he latched to breastfeed, he would get that oral vitamin K. And then, of course, it's coming through, hopefully, my breast milk. But going into this pregnancy, I was a lot more aware. I think I had sufficient stores if I had to think about like the supplements that I took during Isaac's birth or Isaac's pregnancy, as well as like the foods that I ate. I think I was probably sufficient in those stores, but I've made more of a conscious effort in this pregnancy to make sure that I'm hitting those. So that's just a kind of little FYI on the vitamin K situation. Now, vitamin K is really important. It's needed to help calcium and other minerals bind to strengthen our bones. It's needed for heart health, oral health, brain health, longevity. It is an important nutrient. It just, I feel like, gets diminished because we've got such a battle of, do we give it in a shot form? Do we give it in oral form? To where I feel like people aren't actually being educated on what is vitamin K, what does it do, and why is it important for baby? So hence why I'm trying to give you some sort of information about it so you can make your own informed decision. Now, if you're a person who eats a pretty predominant plant-based diet, if you have a history of excessive bleeding, blood clotting, placental calcification, if you've taken antibiotics when you're pregnant, if you're on blood thinning medication, those would probably be good indicators that you need to supplement with vitamin K. Preferred source to get vitamin K is through animals and bacterial fermentation. So liver, duck fat, egg yolks, ghee, cheese, kefir, sauerkraut, fermented yogurt. Those would all be great sources to help get vitamin K. Benefits for baby obviously include help in bone formation, promotes healthy development of face, skull, and nervous system. For mom, again, it reduces the placental calcification, and we want to make sure that your colostrum can be high in the K2 to meet baby's needs once you start breastfeeding. And then just a couple things, like if you end up having a C-section, those babies may be at more risk for a reduced, even more of a reduced level of vitamin K. So also babies who maybe have been exposed to medications or who have been circumcised, they will have a higher risk. Just know that if you go into having a C-section or if you're put on antibiotics, medications, if your baby's circumcised, your doctor's probably going to advise that your baby needs the vitamin K shot. Again, I'm just giving you information. You need to make your own informed decision, but that could be where you look into the oral vitamin K drops that don't have any synthetic ingredients added to it. And then your microbiome, mom's microbiome, will play a huge role in how much vitamin K2 mom can have, because vitamin K2 is synthesized by beneficial bacteria in the intestines, which is why it's harder for babies to have sufficient needs, because their GI tract and their intestines they're not fully working yet, right? That's why we breastfeed. That's why we don't give solids to babies right away, because that system still needs time to develop outside. That's why they call it a fourth trimester, right? Like baby is still growing and developing outside the womb. So if you know that your gut microbiome is a mess, this would also be probably an indicator that you need to supplement with vitamin K2 just to help try to get those reserves ready to go for baby. But yeah, just another great example of how our microbiome plays such an important role in our overall health, even down to like how a vitamin is synthesized and passed on to baby. So those are the 5 additional ones you need to look at for your second and third trimester. I hope that's helpful. I hope it gave you some things to think about, and we'll see you next time.